Hello, my friends. I know many of you are getting ready for the PMP exam, and you recently heard from the PMI that the 7th edition is now one of the reference materials. In the next 15 to 20 minutes, we're going to cover everything that you need to know about the PMBOK Guide 7th edition and what exactly the 6th edition looks like compared to the 7th. So getting straight into it, if you take a look at the 7th edition, you realize that there are no process groups and knowledge areas described as such. Instead, you see this being replaced with domains and principles. That's the summary. So I call this the PMBOK Guide version 6 to 7 Cutover Mega Crash Course. This was put together by my buddy Roy and I. You can see the link up there, hybridprojectmanagement.com. We trained a course back in September, the entire September, for the 7th edition. And some of those pieces, that's what I'm going to present to you, just giving you the top of the wave so that you come away feeling comfortable to take the exam. All right, so it's a mega crash course, very, very quick. So the major difference, like I said, between the 6th and 7th is you had initiating, planning, all the way to closing in the 6th. Now in the 7th, we start off with the standard for project management instead of process groups, now being an introduction, then a system for value delivery and project management principles. So what is the system for value delivery? The summary is projects, programs, portfolios, and operations. They work together to give a value delivery system in any firm. Think about it more as a label, because I know from your studying the 6th edition, you already know what projects, programs, and portfolios are, what operations are. But the focus on the 7th isn't those. It is more of the ultimate value that you deliver to the customer. And that's why it's called a value delivery system. So think about it like this. What is value? Value refers to the net quantifiable benefits that a customer experiences. That value will lead, hopefully, to an outcome that the customer wants, a favorable outcome that the customer desires. And that's really the focus. So we have these 12 principles: stewardship, team, stakeholders, value, systems thinking, leadership, tailoring, quality, complexity, risk, adaptability, and resiliency, and change. And I've summarized those, and you can read those in more detail in the PMBOK Guide 7th edition, or look out for my video. I call it the 12 Principles of Project Management. You can find that there as well, broken down into more detail. Now, the question often is, well, Phil, what happened to the knowledge areas? Well, the knowledge areas as labeled knowledge areas are not labeled as such. Instead, in the 7th edition, you have a different description of project management. And this is broken down into what we would call project performance domains. We have 8 performance domains: stakeholders, team, development approach and life cycle, planning, project work, delivery, measurement, uncertainty. And I'll cover those. And last but not least, we have tailoring as an important concept, which is in the 7th edition now. It's its own chapter, tailoring. And then we also have the models, methods, and artifacts. So if you watch my other videos about the 7th edition, you'll be able to listen to what I have to say about models, methods, and artifacts. You do know that the PMI have moved away from doing ITTO, very heavy ITTO focused exams anyway. So the models, methods, and artifacts, you don't need to go crazy cramming those. Just understand what they are and move on. And even if you don't have time to read all of those, PMI style has never been to focus on a boatload of inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. It's more situational, asking you what you would do under various circumstances. So just keep that in mind when you're studying, okay? And just remember that not everything is in the 7th edition. Remember that the PMI tells you the content outline, the PMP exam content outline is what the exam is based on. So just take this as piece of the cake. In addition to this understanding, be aware that PMI Standards Plus is a digital content platform where there's a lot more information, like page 25 from the 6th edition. It really didn't go away. It's still looming in the background. So you haven't lost a lot of what you thought you had. For those of you who are PMPs, you haven't lost a lot of what you thought you had. Instead, things have just been put into other places in the PMI universe. All right, so moving on. Very big concept to grasp as you move into the 7th edition is understanding why do we care to make this a little bit more agnostic. And the reason is not every project is like what you're seeing over there. What you're seeing over there on the screen is how predictive projects typically are. We fix scope, schedule and budget are flexible, but typically what we're fixing is the scope. The flip side, in agile projects, you could call them adaptive projects, we have scope being flexible and schedule and budget being fixed. Like you have a fixed team size or constrained team size. We don't go beyond 9, right? So we have between 3 and 9 on an agile team. We also have a fixed time box, a sprint, or whatever the cadence is. And that's what we mean by saying fixed. So we flip the triangle on its head, and that's how it works. So taking a look at this, if you haven't already seen this, I would advise you to go to the Agile Practice Guide, page 14. That's where this is. Do you know what it is? It's the Stacy Complexity Model. And the summary of the Stacy Complexity Model is, if you're working on predictive stuff, use a predictive arrangement. In other words, down here, you probably feel more at home, and it would make more sense for you to run your project in that way. There's nothing wrong in running projects in a predictive sense. PMI's research show that companies who deliver predictively but think in an agile fashion, they do much better than companies that think predictively and deliver predictively, right? So you could deliver one time, but that doesn't mean you cannot apply agile thinking to your project. You can. So the idea is, as we begin to move more into the realm of complexity, as you begin to move into the complex space, right, you need to be more agile in your thinking and in your doing, and ultimately you hit anarchy. And of course, more than ever before, you need to be extremely, extremely agile to the max. So that's the understanding I want you to have coming in. Now, moving on to the concept of process groups and knowledge areas, I really want to stress that all that you learned hasn't been lost. The 5 process groups of initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing are still very relevant to your exam. In fact, it's one of the pieces talked about in the 7th edition, not extremely blown out, but it's mentioned, and that shows its relevance to a large degree. In fact, a lot of organizations are still using this framework. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's still great project management, all right? So understanding the 5 process groups is a great base for you to come into the world of project management. To build on that, you need to understand the areas of knowledge. They're not explicit in the 7th edition, but they are relevant. They're still relevant because they are in the Agile Practice Guide, and a ton of companies still use these 10 knowledge areas. So we have integration, the unification, the combination of different parts of project management, scoping out the project, scheduling, costing the project, managing quality on the project, managing resources, managing communications, managing procurements, managing stakeholder engagement, and the bullseye right in the middle is risk, because risk touches everything. And that's why I chose to put risk right there in the middle. Risk is big, very, very important. Whenever you think of risk, you can think of all the other knowledge areas. Now, with that understanding, you've got to remember the 12 principles, like you're seeing here on the screen. These are the 12 principles, and in your mind, I want these to be at the base of everything you do as a project manager from PMI's lens. Think about your stakeholders, right? Be a good steward, collaborate, engage, be a good leader, think about quality, navigate the project the best way you can, manage risk, have a mindset of being resilient, manage change. That's the narrative. Basically, be proactive. That's the summary. Now, I know lots of you have tried reading the book, okay, and you got stuck. You tried reading the 7th edition and you got stuck. It didn't work. And that's why we're here, and that's why I'm going to break this down for you. we're going into the next layer of understanding. So we've talked about the principles, okay? I just want to show you one more time where these principles are. We're going to go through them really rapidly. Page 24. It reads, be a diligent, respectful, and caring steward. That makes absolute sense. Take care of what's been given to you. Page 31, effectively engage with stakeholders, right? And how are you going to do that? By collaborating. So going to page 28, page 28 is on collaboration. It says, create a collaborative project team environment. I call that one collaboration. It's called team, but it's really about collaboration. And that will lead to 3.3, stakeholder engagement. You create an environment of collaboration, you're going to get engagement. Page 34, focus on value. Again, going back to the role of the product owner, it's very value focused, and that should be our focus. We should think in a lean fashion, even in the world of predictive. If it's not adding value, don't do it. Page 37, recognize, evaluate, and respond to systems interactions. See the big picture. See how systems interact. 3.6, demonstrate leadership behaviors. This one, I call this leadership. Moving on to page 44, tailor based on context. Depending on the project you're working, you could choose to use predictive, but you got to tailor. You could choose to tailor down the predictive methods, and you could choose to tailor up the agile methods. You could also choose to tailor down the agile methods. For example, you may choose to use Kanban because it's the best. It has less process. It's really powerful though. Moving on, we have quality, build quality into processes and deliverables. Next, we have page 50, navigate complexity. And here we talk about complexity being a factor of human behavior, system behavior, and then uncertainty and ambiguity. We also talk about technological innovation on page 51. Page 55, embrace adaptability and resiliency. Adaptability is the ability to respond to changing conditions. Resiliency is the ability to absorb impacts and to recover quickly from a setback or failure. Build redundancy into your systems, into your thinking, into your project. It helps when rubber meets road. Next, page 58, and this is our final one, enable change to achieve the envisioned future state. That's it. It's all right there in your 7th edition. You can go read up the details, or you could join us on hybridprojectmanagement.com, where Roy and I go through everything from an agile lens, from a predictive lens, from a hybrid lens. And that's pretty much it. Those are your 12 principles, okay? Next, we're moving into the topic of the domains, okay? So you're going to follow me now to the next part of the 7th edition. We're jumping straight into the performance domain known as stakeholders. You see it on the screen. Now, the purpose of this process group pentagon, you've seen me talk about the process group pentagon. I created this to give people a composite view of everything, an all-in-one view, so that those of you that have spent so many years, so many hours studying the 6th edition, you'll be able to reconcile what is what. All right, so here we have the stakeholder performance domain, okay? Now, before we go into the performance domains, I want to show you that this is just mapping knowledge areas and process groups to the domains. All the content already exists. The stuff you've read in the 6th edition is not going to waste. It is still relevant. Let's read here on page 7. It says, a project performance domain is a group of related activities that are critical for the effective delivery of project outcomes. That's it. So you could say a performance domain is a group of related activities that ultimately map to knowledge areas and process groups. So I don't want you to be all confused thinking this is a new world order of project management. No, it's not. The stuff that you knew still stands, okay? Don't lose sleep over it. Don't go crazy over it. Don't go buying every book under the sun that says it's a 7th edition book because I know they're going to start popping up, right? Like a whack-a-mole game. Just whack it on its head and move on. Don't even look at it, right? just blindly whack it and move on and say, no, I'm not reading you because Phil said what I know will see me through. This crash course, trust me, it's going to be enough for a lot of you that are taking the exam 2021 ending early 2022. Now, some of you are going to have to step up your game because I expect the narrative to become more prevalent. We see it all the time. I mean, at the beginning of the year, everyone was scrambling for the hills. Oh, MBTI is on the exam. And then it died down. So it's ebbs and flows and in waves. And people are going to come back screaming, oh, this is on the exam. Well, it could very well be a pretest question, or it could be a real question. We don't know. So what I'm saying is, don't get sidetracked trying to read books about the 7th edition ad nauseum. I would recommend reading the book, Journey with My Buddy Roy and I, on hybridprojectmanagement.com, but that should be enough, okay? So now you know what a performance domain is, and we're in stakeholder. Let's go to stakeholder on page 8. It says, the stakeholder performance domain addresses activities and functions associated with stakeholders. That's all you need to know. And that maps directly to the stakeholder management knowledge area. End of story. If there's some stuff that could be new narrative in the 7th edition, absolutely. Just open it, read it if you got a moment. But if your exam is coming up tomorrow or the day after, this is meant to help you. All right. Next, we have team. Team maps to resources. Let's read what it says on page 16 here. The team performance domain addresses activities and functions associated with the people who were responsible for producing project deliverables that realize business outcomes. That's it. Maps back to resources. The next one is development approach and life cycle. You do know that in integration, this should be one of the first things you do. You should ask the question, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to build? What is our cadence for delivery going to be? Is it a one-time delivery? Can we deliver in multiple pieces and increments? If the answer is yes, we can deliver an increment, you got to be thinking more agile. You got to be thinking in an iterative fashion, an incremental fashion. You got to be agile. Okay? That's a summary. There's not much to it. So if you've read the Agile Practice Guide, you're already in that line of thinking. Okay? Now, all of these, I will break them down a little bit more for you before we conclude for today, but I just want you to be comfortable with the idea. Let's move into the next performance domain. The next one is planning. Planning is planning is planning. If you read planning in the 6th edition, trust me, you are good. You understand planning from that perspective. It's good. Let's read. The planning performance domain addresses activities and functions associated with the initial, ongoing, and evolving organization and coordination necessary for delivering project deliverables and outcomes. That's it. Nothing more. Moving on, we have project work. So when you take a look at project work, you see it pop up in these areas. I put it in integration. I put it in executing. I showed it mapping directly to executing. And I showed it mapping, as you can see here, directly to resources. Okay, so you've got the picture. I'll stay out of the frame for a little bit for it to sink in. So that's the planning performance domain. But when you take a closer look at the planning performance domain, a few things you see: delivery, planning your delivery, planning estimating, planning schedules. It goes on and on. It's stuff you already know, you see. So I'm hoping that what I'm showing you here is making you feel more comfortable. There's a notable page here, page 63, and it just shows a different image from what you were used to in the PMBOK Guide, 6th edition, when it comes to the project budget. We now see management reserve above the project budget. We don't see management reserve in the project budget. They've changed that narrative. Instead, we see cost baseline, contingency reserve, that's project budget, and we see management reserve above. And I believe the intent is because different agencies use a different configuration to what PMI used to show. So it's no surprise that they've changed. The next one we have here is the delivery performance domain, and you can see that I've mapped that to scope. I have also mapped that to quality. So let's read the delivery performance domain and what exactly this is. It says here, and did we actually read the project work performance domain? We probably didn't. Let me read that really quickly. It reads, the project work performance domain addresses activities and functions associated with establishing project processes, managing physical resources, and fostering a learning environment. So let me backtrack here. So you see that I put the project work performance domain in a few places. I put it in integration because it talks about learning. I put it in executing because it cuts across all executing. And I put it in resources as well. All right, so now we're moving on to the delivery performance domain. Delivery performance domain is on page 80. It says, the delivery performance domain addresses activities and functions associated with delivering the scope and quality that the project was undertaken to achieve. Get the idea? That's it. All right. So we're going up on about 20 minutes. We're going to get done here very soon. We've got a couple more domains to look at. Let's go to the next one. The next one here after delivery is measurement. And I know I've got uncertainty on the screen. We will come to that. But we've got the measurement performance domain. And this just reads on page 93. The measurement performance domain addresses activities and functions associated with assessing project performance and taking appropriate actions to maintain acceptable performance. Pretty straightforward. All right, now we're going to the very final one, I believe, 2.8, and this is on page 116, and this is the uncertainty performance domain. And it reads, the uncertainty performance domain addresses activities and functions associated with uncertainty. What else could it map to? Risk, of course. So if you understand the topics in risk, you will find this to not be as intimidating. Okay, and you also have the measurement performance domain in totality. I show it as mapping to the monitoring and controlling process group overall. Okay, and that's pretty much at a high level what the domains and the principles are about. Okay, now we're going to go through the top of the waves of each performance domain so that you feel more comfortable with them. Stakeholder performance domain, identify your stakeholders, prioritize them, monitor their engagement, understand what has changed, understand them better, engage them, and analyze how your stakeholder engagement is going. That's pretty much what this is all about. Team performance domain, project team management and leadership, project team culture, high performing teams, leadership skills, tailoring leadership styles. The Hersey-Blanchard model will obviously come to mind here. 2.3, development approach and life cycles. Development, cadence, and life cycle relationship. You got to think about that. And all of these are going to help you in understanding what delivery approach to use. So your delivery cadence, your development approaches, considerations for selecting a development approach. I showed you the Stacy complexity model. Life cycle and phase definitions also come in here, and aligning the delivery cadence, the development approach, and life cycle. The bottom line is this: if you are delivering in frequent, small or smaller increments, you need to be thinking more agile. What is your delivery cadence going to be? You decide, right? The team decides. That's the narrative. Number 4, planning domain summary. There's an overview of planning. Variables of planning. If you've gone over those 24 processes on page 25 of the 6th edition, there's nothing to be afraid of here. Project team composition and structure needs to be planned, communications, planning physical resources, procurements, changes, how you're going to manage change, what metrics are you going to use, and how you're going to align the project. All of this stuff is what you already know. Many of you. I know there's some of you who are new to this narrative, but this is for people who've read the 6th and just don't want to spend another 2, 3, 5 hours, 10 hours, or can't spend that time. I'm hoping this video helps you. All right, next we have project work performance domain summary. So be aware of project processes, whatever those may look like, balancing competing constraints, maintaining project team focus, project communications and engagement comes in here. Managing physical resources, of course, this is like your control resources process. Working with procurements, monitoring new work and changes. And learning throughout the project, of course, this is where we talk about integration, managed project knowledge. 2.6, delivery of value. Value, value, value. You've heard me call the product owner the chief value officer. It's a no-brainer. It's what you need to think of, whether you're on an agile project or a predictive project. The concept of deliverables, quality. What about suboptimal outcomes? If it's a less than ideal outcome, well, it's something to learn from. If it's a suboptimal outcome, maybe you stopped the project at a particular point in the road, you didn't get all the deliverables done. What do? You already know this from page 123 of the 6th edition. You already know that. 2.7, measurement, performance domain summary. Establish effective measures. Make sure you're measuring the right stuff. What to measure needs to be discussed. And then how do you present the information? What are some of the pitfalls of this performance domain? Some people go off on a rabbit trail showing so much information on these traffic lights. Still on the measurement performance domain, a lot of folks make mistakes. There's some pitfalls in the measurement performance domain, putting too much information in charts, just too much stuff in even the simplest of charts. We need to be aware of things like that. Stay clear of that. The next thing we talk about in this performance domain is troubleshooting. What is wrong and what can we fix? And then growing and improving, getting better in how we make measurements and how we report on measurements. The final performance domain here is uncertainty. The uncertainty performance domain, we have different types of uncertainty and we need to be aware of these uncertainty types. We have uncertainty, general uncertainty, we have ambiguity, and we have complexity. I want to touch on these really quick. It's quite an interesting narrative and it's one of my favorites. So very quick here on page 117, uncertainty, a lack of understanding and awareness of issues, events, paths to follow, or solutions to pursue. We have ambiguity, a state of being unclear, having difficulty in identifying the cause of events, or having multiple options from which to choose. Then we have complexity, a characteristic of a program or project or its environment that is difficult to manage due to human behavior, system behavior, and ambiguity. We have volatility, the possibility for rapid and unpredictable change. And last but not least, we have risk, an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, has a positive or negative effect on one or more project objectives. And in the 7th edition, we go through those. But you already have a general understanding of these. And just remember the questions are going to be situational. They're not going to be parrot fashion, ITTO, domain, process, task, not all that stuff. All right, so I hope this helps you. If you want a deeper dive, go on down to hybridprojectmanagement.com because Roy and I blow this out about, I want to say about 12 times what I'm showing you right here. So you can imagine the volume that you could still watch. Those of you who are already PMPs and want to know what's in the book, I encourage you to go on down to hybridprojectmanagement.com. But those of you that are just preparing and you really want to get this thing down tomorrow or in a couple of days, I wish you all the best. I know you may not have time to do that. So we'll see you on the other side of you being a PMP. All right, you take care and bye for now. Hello, my friends. I know many of you are getting ready for the PMP exam, and you recently heard from the PMI that the 7th edition is now one of the reference materials. In the next 15 to 20 minutes, we're going to cover everything that you need to know about the PMBOK Guide 7th edition and what exactly the 6th edition looks like compared to the 7th. So getting straight into it, if you take a look at the 7th edition, you realize that there are no process groups and knowledge areas described as such. Instead, you see this being replaced with domains and principles. That's the summary. So I call this the PMBOK Guide version 6 to 7 Cutover Mega Crash Course. This was put together by my buddy Roy and I. You can see the link up there, hybridprojectmanagement.com. We trained a course back in September, the entire September, for the 7th edition. And some of those pieces, that's what I'm going to present to you, just giving you the top of the wave so that you come away feeling comfortable to take the exam. All right, so it's a mega crash course, very, very quick. So the major difference, like I said, between the 6th and 7th is You had initiating, planning, all the way to closing in the 6th. Now in the 7th, we start off with the standard for project management instead of process groups, now being an introduction, then a system for value delivery and project management principles. So what is the system for value delivery? The summary is projects, programs, portfolios, and operations. They work together to give a value delivery system in any firm. Think about it more as a label, because I know from your studying the 6th edition, you already know what projects, programs, and portfolios are, what operations are. But the focus on the 7th isn't those. It is more of the ultimate value that you deliver to the customer. And that's why it's called a value delivery system. So think about it like this. What is value? Value refers to the net quantifiable benefits that a customer experiences. That value will lead, hopefully, to an outcome that the customer wants, a favorable outcome that the customer desires. And that's really the focus. So we have these 12 principles: stewardship, team, stakeholders, value, systems thinking, leadership, tailoring, quality, complexity, risk, adaptability, and resiliency, and change. So my friends, I hope you've enjoyed it so far. We've come to that point in the road where we're going to stop the recording, and we'll ask you to drop any comments, any questions below. Don't forget to hit like so you can find this video, and subscribe so that you get other videos as they become available. But the PMI made this shocker announcement today. I know lots of us were expecting to hear this at the end of the year, maybe sometime in December after holiday, but that's just how PMI works. They just bring a surprise on you. The same way they released the 7th edition before we were expecting, they've come up with another surprise. But anyway, hopefully this video will keep you on track. I wish you all the very best in your prep. You take care, and bye for now.